Hello again, and welcome back to another edition of Austin's American Flyer, where today we're looking at some of the imperfections that happened in some of the American Flyer plastic cars, both first generation, and I've actually got something a lot more recent to share with you today as well. So stick around for some special contributions from some of you out there today on Austin's American Flyer. If you look in the literature of American Flyer, one of the things that they did when they transitioned to S-Gauge is they talked about this newfangled plastic and how the cars would weigh less and still have some of the same great characteristics that consumers had grown to love. What we didn't know, what Flyer didn't know, is plastics had some development issues coming out of the gate. And as a result of that, some of the early plastic cars from '46 tended to have some warp issues. And I have shared with you briefly a couple weeks ago that sometimes it caused some pretty destructive results, but most of the time you just get some interesting characteristics. For example, we might call them beauty marks. So here beside me are a few of the cars that I found in the collection I have here. And again, these cars are going to be from '46, but I can see based on some of the couplers that these would have come even a few years later, or at least they would have been sold a few years later. If we put the straight edge on top of the roof line here, you can see while this car was originally flat, it now has two dips in either side of the middle, and the middle is raised up a little bit high so that you actually get some rocking. It's a little harder to see, but if we turn the car sideways, there's a little bit of bowing happening here in the middle, but this isn't super obvious. I think we might be able to find examples of that to greater degrees. Here is a good old 929. I know I've got a few more of these that have all kinds of twists and bumps in them. Again, if we look at the roof line here, this one's a little more obvious than the last one. And what's not quite as obvious is what's going on underneath the frame. And again, I'll try to show this as best I can. It's not showing up very well. But basically, when I turn this car over, what I'm seeing is the end of the frame goes like this. It's got a swoop in it, which means this entire plastic chassis is under tension. So if someone were to ever pull this particular car apart, you might find it challenging to get it back together. And that's one of the challenges with some of these old cars, especially when it comes to passenger cars, New Haven cars. I've seen some of those, and I know others have shared videos where the shell is, been twisted because the frame has changed dimensionally, and it's under incredible tension. And so if for some reason those need to be separated, your holes no longer line up for the pins in the corners, and sometimes you can't get them back together. So it's a real adventure sometimes. Now this one, this one is one of the more obvious ones in my fleet. Its first life, this was a Camel, I think. But again, we have a huge hump here in the middle. And this one probably more so than the others. If we look at the sides here, you can see how the side is just completely sucked in. And so it's fairly flat here. The door is sucked in. This part is sucked in, but then it bows out down here. So you've got all kinds of crazy twisting happening. And then on this side, again, you can see it's more consistent along. But again, at the bottom, I don't know how well this will come through, but you can see there's a gap here where it bulges out on this side and it bulges out on this side, and then on this side here you can see again it bulges out at the bottom. To be honest, I think these cars are kind of cool. If you've ever paid any attention to real world freight cars, they tend to be pretty beat up, especially some of the cars that haul bulk freight like coal cars and gondolas. So not that I'm saying we should make these look like this, but in one hand it's a little bit prototypical. All right, and I'm sure a lot of us have Cabooses. I know, again, I have several of these. This one is maybe not quite as obvious as some of the others I have, but if we put a straight edge across the top, you can see that the cupola is actually kind of swooping down. This one doesn't really have too much bulging going on the edges, but this would be one that, because it's got the swoop, if the frame were to ever become separated from the shell, it would be no simple task to bring them back together, because of the fact that because of the swoop, the shell is actually shrunk to a degree from the frame. So anyhow, that's fascinating. And then once again, let me gather the pieces of this poor Searchlight floodlight car. It's number 934 or 634, sorry, is probably the worst example of plastic deformity that I've ever seen. It is totally wrecked itself. I have here the other truck and part of the frame. Surprisingly, the brake wheel is still there. But this is an extreme example that it's hard to know for sure if that had some help. Like I indicated before, maybe it was in an attic space or something where some of the weaknesses in the plastic were exacerbated. But it's an interesting conversation piece at this point. And then here are some pictures that some of you sent in, and thank you for doing this. It's a lot of fun to see what else is out there. Now this is a car that I wouldn't expect to have plastic issues. This is a 954 Grand Canyon. It's the red version. And it's got knuckle couplers, and if memory serves, these came out in about 54. And I thought maybe they were 54, 55 were the 2 years that they produced these. And I have the green set, and it's absolutely immaculate. This one I recently picked up, this and a few other cars that I think were part of a set. I have some research to do, but this one caught my eye, and I don't know how well you can see this, but this rear truck, it's a tri-axle or six-wheel truck, and actually the only wheel that's touching is the one in the back, because the whole thing is jackknifed like this. If I turn it to the side, I think it'll become more obvious what I'm talking about. Notice this rear porch and how it's quite a slope downward. I don't know how well we can show that, but it's a major twist down. And again, this is something you see on some of the earlier plastic cars, passenger cars, but I was kind of surprised to see it on this one. Now, in the case of this car, I don't know for sure what can be done with it because of this severe slope on the back end. And it's, like I said, it's bad enough that only these wheels are actually touching the rail. And so this is one I might see if there might be a way to try to heat the plastic and reform it, but boy oh boy, I don't know. So if you have any thoughts, suggestions on what to do to repair a passenger car like this, because it's a nice car now. It's you know, it's not perfect. It's got a scratch there, unfortunately, and there's a little bit of funky stuff going on with the paint there. But it still would be a nice car, even if this is touched up and obvious. It'd be nice to be able to operate this car. So I would love to hear your thoughts on possible ways of repairing something like this. Thank you one and all for stopping in today. And those of you that sent contributions, really appreciate you taking the time and the effort to make that happen. That's just, it's so great to see some of the things that are out there. If you haven't ever taken a few moments to stick around to the end of this video, please do so. There's some ways you can support. And if you're ever interested, I'd love to have you join the Patreon supporters that have been signing up. That little bit a month goes a long way. So thank you so much to those of you that have signed up and those of you that will. Until next time, take care. God bless. Thank you so much. Enjoy those American Flyer trains, and we'll see you.